and welcome to episode 537 of the GodIsAGeek.com podcast. My name's Adam Cook, I'm your host, and this week I'm joined by Chris Hyde. It's just me and Chris. Hello, Chris.
It is. Oh, yeah, it's just us two. Dynamic
just the
duo.
two of us.
We can make it if we try.
Are we going to try?
We always try. I can't not try on a podcast. We owe it to the listeners to try. That's all we can do, right?
That's good enough with me, mate. We missed a week. It's been busy. I'm going to say that every time we miss a week because it's always true.
It's silly season now as well. It's getting to the business end of shenanigans for the year. So
my favourite thing is when people say things to me like in emails, like, "Oh, well, now we're sort of into the end of the last big releases," and I'm like, "Yeah, but that just means one thing for us."
Yeah,
I get these sentiments. The sentiment's really nice, but it just means Game of the Year's coming, and yeah.
We like it, but it's
yes. Yeah.
I mean, it's a lot for you. I don't even
That's
like,
good.
But it's good fun. It's always good fun.
It's good fun, and it's important to speak about. I mentioned Game of the Year because there's a game come out recently that I've been waiting for an incredibly long time, and it's one of those you're going to wonder, could it make lists? Well, I mean, I'll start with you, Chris, because you played it as well. Could Alan Wake 2 make lists? Alan Wake 2's here.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't think you were going to come to me first, actually, given your history with the series, because I haven't played the original Shock Horror. I haven't played an old game, but I played Control, but I hadn't, and the Alan Wake Experience. Is that the DLC name?
Altered World Event, AWE, I think it was.
AWE, I know that's that, but they also then called it Alan Wake thing. Anyway.
No, I think that's what we all assumed it is, but I'm thinking it's Altered World Experience, I think, at AWE. Or Event. It might be Event, Altered World Event. Can't remember.
Altered World Event, I think it is, yeah. And so that was kind of my Remedy experience. But in terms of answering your initial question, will this game be talked about on lists? And obviously at Game of the Year, we have multiple lists over multiple days. This game is definitely going to be talked about on various lists, I think, because even for someone who doesn't perhaps share the lore, the background that you probably have going in. I mean, how many years ago was Alan Wake?
All I can tell you is it was on Xbox 360. That's all I can remember.
It feels like 2008-ish, I want to say.
That sounds right, yeah.
Sounds about that. It's a long time, right? So that would be 15 years, right? That's a fair old wait. Even without like the background of that, like
2010, by the way, 2010.
2010. Okay, so
still 13 years.
Still a long time for you to be, because I know you like the original, and a lot of people did. But yeah, Alan Wake 2. So I kind of went in with a bit like no preconceptions. I knew it wasn't going to be like Control. I knew like of Alan Wake, like the character and the game, but I hadn't played it, so I didn't really know. Watched a handy little Remedy recap, which helped me, because there are some things you need to know, because there are key story beats that I think you need to know what's gone before for some of them to make sense. But that did help. But yeah, listen, I mean, I'll just kind of summarize, I guess, the game for people that don't know. So that in this time around, you kind of, the game's sort of split in half in some respects, because there's sort of like two protagonists. One of them is Alan Wake, and the other one is an FBI agent called Saga Anderson. And originally you start playing as Saga, and you kind of begin to unravel some mystery. Initially, it feels like nothing to do with Alan Wake. We'll talk about the opening scene in a minute, and I'm sure that'll get mentioned in the Game of the Year. But and then as the game goes on, you kind of get more and more links to Alan, and then you able to play as him. And they're two very different. They're similar but very different feels of gameplay. So Saga is like, I don't want to spoil a lot of story beats, but like the kind of Saga being an FBI agent, she's kind of going around uncovering clues. I'm trying to piece together a I guess the investigation that she's trying to uncover, and
Yeah.
it goes very sort of like Sherlocky in places. There's a whole mind palace, not a palace, a mind place. We drop an A, but I mean they acknowledge that very straight away that it's a take on it, where she goes to solve her clues and things. And yeah, it's kind of a mixture of kind of combat and Sherlockiness, I suppose, to try and progress the game and uncover and unravel more of the mysteries. Whereas the Alan side of things is a bit more, I don't want to say kind of supernaturally, but it is that kind of vibe, isn't it? It's that kind of, it's more of a almost Ghostwire Tokyo type weird, without spoiling things. It's a more kind of darker tone and type of play. So there's very much like, it's not two different gameplay styles, because it's still, it's still kind of third person exploration, and then there's kind of shooting combat as well. But there are, it does feel different to play both of them, I think. And I think the way that the kind of story unravels between the two of them feels different to play as well, right? I think that's fair to say as well. So yeah, I mean, I don't want to keep talking, because I very much want to bring you in on how you feel about it. I know there are things that we both love about this game. But there are also things I think we have differing opinions on. So I kind of want to bring you in before I go too far down the rabbit hole on kind of your overall take of it.
I mean, it's been a long way, and the only complaint I have about it is going to be a really strange one, is that I actually think it's slightly too long. The original was like at the time, traditional kind of third-person action-adventure shooter sort of length, and this does sort of follow that trend where games are generally, I mean, it started ages ago. You look at God of War, and you think of God of War as the same sort of thing, like a 10 to 12 hour tops, and it's actually 30 hours plus. This isn't quite that, but I was quite surprised looking when I'd finished it and credits had rolled, and it's like I did a lot of exploring, but my PlayStation tells me I played 25 hours, which just seems like a lot for an Alan Wake game. And like, I was initially concerned that you've waited 13 years for a sequel, and you're not starting. It's not Alan Wake, if you know what I mean. Like, but only, and that was the only reason why I was sort of confused or concerned, because it's like you wait that long, but it works. Like you sort of have to trust Remedy, and it works because it makes sense how the story begins. It makes sense how the story develops. I'm not going to sit here and say that after 13 years, I'm like, yep, every bit of that story paid off, and it was worth the wait. Because like, honestly. We won't get into spoilers here, but honestly, like, I think it actually just asks more questions than it answers, and I think, I don't know, it's one of those where I feel like if you asked the people behind the story, did you intend this all those years ago? Did you even intend this story when you alluded to this stuff in Control? I think they'd have to just say yes, even if that's not true. Do you know what I mean? Because
I definitely.
I sort of feel some of this now. They've it's difficult. They've written so many. It's so weird. It's so weird, which is what I loved about the first one. I love Control for that reason. Like, it is such a strange story. It's so bizarre, and it's incredibly meta at times as well, on so many levels that, like, I want to talk about, but I won't spoil. But it is so meta on so many levels, with so many nods to so many games. Part of me feels they might have written themselves into a corner a little bit, where there's actually no way out of it. It's not a case of, oh, you just need to be smart. Like, it is so layers upon layers upon layers, and it is so difficult to know what they should or shouldn't do. And I wonder if they know. But I said I wasn't going to complain. I do. I think, first of all, I think it's probably one of the best looking games I've ever seen. Ever, period. Like, end of. I can't think of too many games that I would say are better looking than Alan Wake 2. I think the audio design, the scares are unreal. I think they're the masters of not, I don't want to say jump scares, I think tension.
Yeah, I mean, I think, listen, like, I think the jump scare thing, I wouldn't say like masters of jump scare, because I feel like jump scares, I mean, play horror games, there's jump scares in them, and there are ways of doing jump scares well, and there are way of doing jump scares badly. I think what Alan Wake 2 does very well with its jump scares. To a point, to be fair, there's some things where I think it goes over the top on them, but it does a lot of that thing where your focus is elsewhere and then it surprises you.
But that's why I call them. That's why I say it's a mastery of it, because I think they know when to do it, and they know when not to do it, and they also know when to not do it for a long period of time, so that the payoff of when they do it is bigger. They know when, like, I know what you're referring to when you say they overdo it, but I think that's intentional. Like that, I was just on edge every corner of every part of that section of the game, and it's weird to me. People keep referring to it as a horror game, but I suppose it is.
It is a little bit. I mean, I wouldn't describe it as scary, but it has jump scares in it. It's like it's a weird type of horror. Wouldn't be the first thing I used to describe it when I was talking about it a minute ago. I think the thing, like, we will talk, like I say, you teed it up at the start. We will talk about this game in Game of the Year, like Moment of the Year, and things like that, and the things it does well, and audio you mentioned, and visuals.
But
and stuff.
What I would say on that is that, like, if anyone is a big fan of Remedy, especially things like Control with the set pieces and stuff, that's the sort of thing you can expect more of without going into any great detail. Like Control was terrific at set pieces and moments, and this is in spades.
It is a game of moments, but it's not a case of like. I mean, there's so many things you've said that I want to come in on. So just to tie off the jump scare stuff, just to clarify what I mean, I think there are moments where I'm like, you little fucker, you've got me there, like, and that is really well done. There are times I do think it's overused where I'm like, it doesn't bother me now. You've done it 4 times in the last 5 minutes. I get it, but they're more. The good is far outweighed by the repetition, if you know what I mean. Like those examples of repetition are probably I've probably experienced it like 2 or 3 times, whereas the times I've been, you little fuckers, like
I just think they unnerve you. I just think they unnerve you constantly.
I think that's the intention. I think the ones, like you say, where there are bigger gaps and you get comfortable in what you're doing, that's when it works. When it does it a few times, you're like, okay, maybe the second time, because you're not expecting it to come again that quickly, it gets you. But the third or fourth, you're like, okay, this is what you're going to do now for the next 5 minutes. Okay, that's fine. And I'm not belittling it, because, you know, it's fine. But like, I think there are moments in this game where the jump scares are done really well, very, very well. And I can probably think of a few, and I've not even played the whole game. I've not finished it, but I can even rattle off a few, but I won't for spoilers, obviously. But like putting the jump scares to one side, like there's so many good, not good, excellent things about this game. You mentioned the visuals and the audio.
Do you know
design. I think
there is, but there's something I think that other people won't talk about as much, and I think it's why I want to interrupt you a bit and mention it, because I think you will agree. Many, many, many years ago, like, you get asked questions on the pod about like what's the game you'd make, sort of thing, and I always wanted to make a game where you kind of, because where I live is quite foresty. To be honest with you, it's a bigger version of Bright Falls. Right, there is like the caravan park, the trailer park, and all that. So there's several of them near us, and I always think it's a really interesting thing to have a game where you go exploring like that. I think Alan Wake 2 does exploration like it's unreal. Like the reason it took me 25 hours to see credits is that I wanted to explore, because everything felt worthwhile. Nothing feels wasted. Like, it isn't actually that big of a game, really. Not really. I mean, you're in towns and there's bits where you're at Alan where it feels bigger, but it's not actually. No. It's not like an open world. Not at all. Not really.
No.
But it's designed in such a clever way that the exploration for me is like, that's one of the things that, even if the story were bad, if the combat were bad, if all of it, the exploration would drag me through, because I just wanted to, you'd see a light or a door and you'd be like, I wonder if I can. And I don't want to go, it's a Metroidvania, but there are a little bit of elements of that where you get tools that let you get into places later that you spot earlier, and there's a reason to revisit locations. There's there's whole buildings and areas you can't get into that I just find the exploration and the realization of the world like really cool. Like listen, it's helped by the fact it looks so good and it sounds so good, but I just really like. And there's also, I don't know if you noticed this, and I don't know if it's intentional or not, but you know how Control was sort of very resource heavy on a lot of people's PCs and stuff because of like you could shoot through rooms and all the paper would flutter around. And
Yeah.
And it was like they did that deliberately to make it feel lived in. There's elements of that a little bit in Alan Wake 2, and I think that's intentional because there's times where you'll be walking around and you're this big sort of clumpy person in this small town and you'll bang into a chair and the chair will fling around the room because you banged into it. So you scare the shit out of yourself just by walking into, or you might knock a picture off a wall. Now, it's not like everything in the game can do that, but the way they've realised the world, to me, adds so much to every part of this game. It feels like a real place. I don't suppose it is. I don't actually know, but it could be. It could be a recreation of a real place. It really could.
Yeah. No, I do agree with you. Like I do have my frustrations, which we will talk about, but there are, I've loved the journey, like you say, the exploration, the atmosphere that those places give off, because even just different buildings in the same area feel different. Like that, it's like, it sounds stupid, like to go, oh well, of course that building looks different to that, but it's like, no, but sometimes when you explore around places, everything can just feel like it's like lifted and dropped.
It all feels
else.
Boutique, doesn't it? It all feels boutique.
And I think,
bespoke. Bespoke is the word I'm looking for.
Bespoke, yeah.
Like there's a bit
that's
in
the word
woods.
I heard, even though you said boutique.
There's a bit in the early game you don't actually. I don't know if you can go there early or not, or if I just didn't. But I went back to, there's a Cauldron Lake section where there's some like log cabins, and like that's a prime example of that, where you wouldn't even be that bothered if they just went like copy paste. But each one of them is different. Like the fittings are different. I mean, they've done it. They've been doing this for a long time, like Quantum Break. I always want to say Quantum Dream, but that's Quantic Dream. Quantum Break, the Xbox exclusive one that Remedy did with the live action stuff. That was good for this. Like there was Alan Wake references in that. There was like, I want to call it environmental storytelling, but I know how that sounds a bit wanky. But it is that. Like there are so many things in every part of this game where you stop and you're like, I'm going to have to turn my flashlight off because it's causing a reflection, and I want to see what that writing says, because I wonder if that's important or part of the story or just tangential. And I think that is, again, there's not many devs that do that. Like, I remember saying this about Control. When you get all these pages all the time, often in a game I'll read some of them but not all of them. But in Control I was like, I'm reading every one of these. And I think Alan Wake does that as well. Alan Wake 2, like every single one of them I would read. Every single thing I found I would... I don't know. I think... I don't know how... Like I say, I don't know how... Well, I don't know what's next. I mean, there's 2 DLCs coming. I would assume Control 2 I hope is on the cards.
I would be amazed if there isn't a Control 2 of some description.
Yeah. I mean, there's... I don't know how far we want to go. I mean, I will say that I do feel that they have now... They owe the audience, but they have now interlinked the Remedy-verse, if you will, in a way that it is unremoved. It is linked now intrinsically. It can't be changed. This is
I'll be honest.
This is what we're doing.
I'll be honest, like, because I was late to the party. We know that, right? And I watched a recap for Alan Wake, but I didn't really immerse myself in the Remedy-verse, if you like. But like, having played a bit of Alan Wake 2, I just started trawling through like just Wikipedia things of like Control and
really easy to
Control wikis or whatever they are, or Remedy wikis, right? Yeah. And I was like, oh yeah, that happened. Oh yeah, that. And I was like, oh okay, I now am in for this, because actually, then later on in Alan Wake 2, when certain things are referenced, I'm there because whereas Control was my first game, I hadn't kind of connected a lot of the dots, and so I was like, okay, that did happen, but then it kind of, you remember some bits, but you forget others. Like, whereas for you, that's like game number whatever, and so you're building as you go. And I just feel like you mentioned it earlier about digging themselves into a bit of a hole. I kind of feel like, giving you more questions than answers, what you said. I don't think these games work if you get all the answers. Like, I don't think that works.
But I as oh god, I'm going to say it, as a fan, of the narrative and the stories that they've been telling for a long time. It doesn't affect the score. Like, I don't disagree with Lyle's score. Do you know what I mean? Like, he gave it 9.5 out of 10. I don't disagree with it. It is going to probably, I mean, it's too early to say. There's still a lot to come, but it's probably going to be on my top 10, I would expect. And it is definitely going to be in our list for moments and visuals and stuff. It's just that good.
Yeah.
But it's one of those where I think I would have liked maybe just one or two answer, and I would be surprised when you finish it if you didn't feel the same, because there's one that is specific to the narrative of this game,
right? Okay.
But what I feel is that God, I keep sighing down the mic. It's going to be awful for people who don't like that sort of thing. But I just
they're unhappy.
No, I'm not unhappy at all. I'm over the moon that it exists, but I don't want to spoil anything at this point.
No.
They've interlinked the games. They've interlinked it all now, and it's like now there is really a properly like a Remedy-verse, right? Okay, great, cool. I just wanted a few questions answered from the original Alan Wake that are still kind of hanging, or maybe I'm not smart enough. There is definitely the opportunity that I don't understand it, because it is very meta. It is very, like I say, layers upon layers upon layers. That it is one of those where you will want to seek out an article or video where someone's like, the Alan Wake 2 story explained, and you're like, oh, I get it now. You know what I mean? It is that,
yeah.
And that's fine. I don't know.
I do just want, and I'm sorry, but I do just want to talk about combat.
Okay.
Because I know we feel differently about this. And like, in some ways, it won't come up on our biggest disappointment list, but it's obviously not. But in some ways, this game is a big disappointment for me, because I'm sitting here, living all the stuff we've just talked about, the stuff that it's amazing at, and I'm sitting there thinking, this could be a 10, because all those things we're talking about for me are 10 out of 10 aspects of that game. Like, absolutely superb atmosphere, story, batshit crazy execution, audio, visuals, tension, exploration, like all those things, tick, 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 and massive gold ticks flashing with, whatever, sparkles, brilliant. And then I don't enjoy the combat in this game, and to the point where I prefer, it wouldn't work. It would not work as a game. I prefer if there was no combat, and it was, it wouldn't work. It wouldn't work at all. But I don't enjoy it. I think it's clunky.
I don't disagree with what you're saying, because it's your opinion. I don't find it clunky. What I do find is that it reminds me of the era it came from. Now that sounds weird. It is a survival horror game where it is deliberately and it doesn't quite work, because people used to use it as like a marketing thing. It was like, well, she's not going to be this amazing crack shot because she's just some woman who found a gun. So she's actually an FBI agent.
Yeah,
and she's also, by the way, quite a good one. Right, so it doesn't quite work. And I think that's
the thing. Like, I don't know what it's like to feel like an FBI agent, but I don't feel like someone that's had combat training. I feel like a clunky person that has just picked up a gun.
This is going to be. We can't keep going back and forth, but I will say they're not just generic enemies. It's important to note that she and her partner have never encountered this kind of thing before.
No, and listen, let's not go. I don't think we should go down the route. I was being facetious with that. I know. We shouldn't try and explain away stuff and go, well, it's because she's not experienced.
I don't disagree that it's. I can totally see what you're saying when you say it's clunky, and I'll be honest with you, I don't think it would be a Remedy game if someone didn't say something about people said that they found the combat and control bad, and I'm like, look, opinions and all that, but I don't know what you want from I always, tangentially here, but I always found Control was almost like, it reminded me mostly of a game like Apex Legends Modern Wise or Titanfall, like in terms of the snappiness of that game. This doesn't do that. This is very slow and methodical with the combat. You can upgrade stuff, but it never really changes that. But it does, to me, feel faithful to the original game, if that makes sense.
Do you know what? That was
from a different era.
My first vibe of it, I've not played the original Adam Wake. I was like, this feels like OG Resident Evil type.
See, that's what I'm getting at. A survival horror game where bullets are not extinct so much, but like they are really important.
Limited and stuff. And...
That said, I think the combat, if they tweaked it to just mean... Because like most Taken in Alan Wake 2 will go down with 3 headshots, right? Mm-hmm. And that's fine.
Yep.
Sort of. Because they are... While that is a very of its time thing, the enemies are very modern Resident Evil in that they will squirrel all over the screen and they will warp around the place and they will make it so that you are wasting bullets by going for a headshot. Now, there are ways to mitigate it that we won't get into because it's sort of not spoilery, but it is a bit spoilery. But they could have just made it, I think, literally, you wouldn't be saying what you're saying if they just made it so that putting 3 or... Let's say putting 5 bullets into the chest killed a Taken, 3 headshots killed a Taken, but it's more like 3 headshots kill a Taken, 15 shots in a body, and it just feels... And I think if you took that, literally changed that, so made them less spongy, I think you might still think it is a bit clunky, but I don't think it would be an issue, because you wouldn't be so, like...
It's like, I guess, like, yes and no, okay, because I do feel like... So, like, I for research purposes, like I've tried it on. There's a story mode which is like a lower difficulty than normal. I didn't try on hard, back that.
Yeah, no
but like the difference, it's almost like babies first then, and I feel like if there was somewhere in between.
Yeah, I thought it might be that.
But like even on babies first, I was just like. I still think there's just decisions that like it would be fine then in a situation where I can see what's going on, and if my aiming was a little bit more responsive, like to the point where I turn the sensitivity up. I never normally have to do that in a game, like the aiming.
Yeah, no, movement, I get you.
Like and like, but in a situation where like you're in the woods, like you said there's like wooded areas around with Saga. I can be in a situation where I'm like. I've got it on, I can have it on easy mode or difficult mode. It doesn't matter. They've teleported behind a tree. I can't see them, so I don't know where to shoot because they've literally teleported, and they're throwing axes at my head that will never miss unless I dodge at the exact moment. But I can't see the axe coming because they could be behind me, and I'm like, at that point, I'm like, I
will say the throws are mitigated by just it's an audio thing. You will hear a throw, and if you hit L1 to dodge,
of course. But I don't think that's fun combat. If I'm just
listen. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying that is a thing with audio, like in that game. But I would also say I didn't actually have any issue with Saga's combat. It was Alan's stuff for me where they do start to like that. We have to move on because we're going to get too spoilery. But there is a section late on where I knew I was near the end. But if I didn't, I would have dropped the difficulty because it was just what this game should not do. If there's one lesson they should take from feedback, what this game should never do is do like wave-based stuff where like there's lots of enemies coming at you. Mm-hmm. This game's fine, 1 or 2 max. Any more than 2 enemies, and the combat system does not support that. Yeah, and sort of as you progress and it gets harder, they do that more often, and that's the misgiving I would say about the combat. I like it otherwise. You're supposed to feel.
I get you're not supposed to feel like
there's a
Devil May Cry.
No, but there's a balance between making someone feel powerless and making it actually not enjoyable to feel.
Yeah, exactly.
You can get that right.
100%.
And I totally, I'm not going to argue. I didn't have that issue, but I can absolutely understand that issue because it was an issue with the first game. It was.
Yeah,
it was an issue back then, and it is a bit odd. But then I think there's a bit of a difference between say Control and Alan Wake 2 in terms of. Yes, they're both third-person games, but they are literally the other ends of that genre. In the like, Control's more zoomed out on Jesse, and Alan Wake 2 is more zoomed in, and everything's bulkier in terms of more realistic. I think is a fair comment. Whereas Control is more of that power fantasy stuff. So I can't even sit here and go, I wish they'd made the combat because again, I don't think it would work. You'd feel too powerful. But there is just maybe a little, like you said, I think they need a difficulty between story.
Yeah,
it needs to be story easy, then normal, then hard. There needs to be easy between story and. Yeah, I think that's fair.
I think definitely wouldn't want the Control
No, it wouldn't work.
combat, that would be mad. But like, I enjoyed the combat in Control because I felt like I had lots of options and that I could, like,
That's the thing that blew my mind about that game when people complained about that. It blew my mind because, my God, the amount of options you had. Yeah. Listen, we must move on from Alan Wake. Otherwise, this will
summarize.
Yeah.
Play it. Like, we may have not given you. We've had to talk around a lot of stuff because it's so much of a better game if you don't know what's coming.
Yeah.
And therefore, don't use the kind of generalities we've been talking in as a reason to put you.
No, it's one of those where you almost do just want to be like, look, just go play it.
Yeah.
The less you know, the better. Go play it.
Yes. Yes.
I will say that it's not going to change people's minds. If you hated Alan Wake, fine. You're not going to suddenly love this, I don't think. It is for fans, but I do think there's absolutely enough here as an individual game. And there is, because you're playing it. Like
there's nothing like it. I would say that.
And that's why I like Remedy, because that's how I felt about Control.
Yeah.
And I think even as far back as Max Payne, back then, like that is how I like Quantum was like kind of the same. Like there was nothing like it. Like no one was doing that. There was like full 90-minute TV episodes that I remember reviewing it. Like at the time, playing the review build, and it was a big game, and then there was like this massive downloads for like the videos because it was a full TV series to go with it. And I watched through them all, and it's like no one's doing this. And that's what Remedy does, and that's why I like Remedy. So play it. Just the less you know, the better. Play it. Another game you probably should play, and it's in Game Pass, so there's no reason not to, is Jusant. Jusant, and that is how you pronounce it. I've checked. Or
that's how I would have pronounced it as well.
Jusant is a French word, I believe. It's by Don't Nod, and like Don't Nod are such an interesting developer. Like I think back to when they made Remember Me and their Life is Strange games, and like they've kind of done everything in a way. Jusant is a mountain climbing game. And it's beautiful, like it's lovely, colourful, beautiful game, and you are climbing a mountain. I haven't finished it yet, but I would like to get back to it and finish it. And it introduces you to words you'll never have heard of. Like they just assume you know what some of these things are called with mountain climbing, and I'm like, oh, that's what you mean. I would have just called that the slack rope or something, and they've got a word for that, you know. But it's one of those where it's an exploration game, but a vertical one, and you go up and down. You're going up and down in bits and pieces, and weird stuff happens in this too. And you find, you know, pages that, again, a bit like Alan Wake, you find pages that flesh out the world. It's just a really nice game. It's not too long. I think about 5-6 hours.
Yeah, I think so. It's definitely on my radar. It's a weird time. It's catch-up time, but I do want to try and play some of this because it looks lovely.
It's lovely looking. It's just a really nice time. Like I sat down to just have a quick play of it, and I found myself like an hour and a half later still playing it. It's just really nice to find the footholds and climb up, and then they start to introduce. I won't go into it because there's no need, but some stuff that changes that, and you can create a different path that you would think previously you couldn't get to, but now you can. It's a clever game. It's a really different game. You know, when you think about Don't Nod. Like I say, I think back to Remember Me, which was a Devil May Cry style third-person action adventure game. Then we got the Life is Strange. Now they're making climbing games. And what was the other game they released just recently? There was another game, a visual novel they released that was all based on choice. I can't think what the name of the game was, and we reviewed it. Chris reviewed that as well. He reviewed both of these two. But like Jusant is really, it's really worth your time. Like it's just, again, there's kind of nothing else like it I can think of. And the other thing,
Gerda.
No, but that is them.
Yeah, I'm just looking at games.
No, this is a different one. This is that's a different game. That was. I'm not going to say that was this year because I can't be sure. But like, I was thinking about the Horizon VR game, which is
when you said about climbing, I was like, like that, or is that?
And there's other games like that in VR. Like Horizon, I thought got the climbing wrong because like you can crisscross around like this all the time, and it just doesn't. It's like, no, this is immersion breaking. This doesn't do that. It's like, well, this is third person. How did they manage to? I don't know. Maybe it's because it's not direct control, but Jusant is well worth a look. It's on Game Pass. I think Game Pass for PC as well, but I don't quote me on that. And also, before we get to listen to Correspondence, I do want to talk about WarioWare moving. Because like, I'm a big fan of the WarioWare games, and I get it. We won't spend ages on it, of course, it's fine. But this is basically a sequel to Smooth Moves from the Wii. You know, it's all motion controlled.
Which, as a statement, is excellent, right?
Yeah.
Like I think it's I mean that's whenever because there's how many of these have been across all
Lots.
the platforms? There's been lots, like 10 or whatever.
Yeah.
And so like you see another one, you're like, okay, but how is it compared to Smooth Moves? It's literally the one you always go like, for me anyway, because that was the one that I spent the most time with. It's a different time now. I think we've said this before with Wii games. I used to play loads with my mates, and now, like, I don't have mates. So no, but this is a multiplayer game at heart, isn't it? That you can play it as a single player. That's the only thing
but I wonder about that because like people, I often feel that's the thing with WarioWare is that people go off and they play it in single player and they're like, I don't get it. Why is everyone raving about this? It's like because you're not playing it with mates, you're not playing it with family, you're not playing it with people. It's better, and they've done stuff with this that like it makes it better with multiplayer. Like you sort of take it in turns through the story, and then you do one that with both of you, and they change the actual mini game to work with you both, if that makes sense. They tweak it slightly. The boss battles are tweaked to be more, to require a bit more from you than if you were playing solo. If you fail a single player one, then your player two gets to have a go at that, and if they succeed, you get your life back, sort of thing. So there's lots of these little things, and what they've added as well is party mode, and party mode is basically Mario Party. Now it's interesting to me because Mario Party was all the mini games is Wario, but without Wario. It's mini games. This is that. Like you pick a board, you play a mini game, the winner gets the dice roll. It's great. It's 2 to 4 players. It's just great. Like they're
just like mini games around a board. Is that
it's just a board game where you roll a 5 and you get to 5 along, and then they'll be like, oh, go back 8, and you're like, but I want forward 5, and now you're sending me back 8. It's a Mario Party game in that respect. It cheats you all the time. I go back to it. I remember when we actually played that at the preview event. And I was in the lead, and I landed on a thing that switched the board round, and there was a person we were playing with who hadn't won a single minigame. He was now one space from completing it, and I was back at the start. It was like, it's Mario Party, that is. That's it's just great fun. And I said it in my review, it feels like a Hail Mary in the way that Pikmin 4 was, in that like they have thrown everything they could. They've gone, oh, that's right, you love Smooth Moves. So this is Smooth Moves 2, with Mario Party in it, with this and that in it. If you don't like this one, we're just going to let's call it quits and walk up. We'll go our separate ways. Do you know what I mean? And that's how Pikmin 4 felt to me. It felt like Nintendo going, look, everyone goes on about, oh, no, it never gets any love, the Pikmin series, only blah, blah, blah. So we'll make this one, which is like 40 hours or whatever, 35 hours, I think I spent 100% in it. And now they've done that with Wario as well. And it's like, if no one buys it this time, it's like, I just stop. It's just so much fun. I don't remember a single time we played it as a family where someone didn't get a laugh out of something. And that's kind of what I want from WarioWare.
Yeah,
so,
100%.
So there's that. And that means now it is time for some...
Chris Hyde. Listen to Correspondence. It's time. It's time. Chris Hyde. Okie dokie. So Mick, who regularly sends in individual questions for us, has sent us in some. So I'll do yours first, Adam, and then if you'd be so kind to go the other way. So firstly, the first question is actually about WarioWare. Okay. Do you think WarioWare is worth $50, or should it have been priced lower?
I don't like questions like this, but like, why shouldn't it be $50?
Oh, well, I just think like, because what I know it's the difference between like, frankly, PS5 prices these days are 70 quid in UK money, but like I love the fact that like Wonder, for example, Super Mario Wonder, just 40 quid or whatever it was, like, or 45 or whatever the RRP was. I just think like,
I don't know how that happened because it normally was 60 quid,
but like I just think that's great. Like I just think, frankly, games for $50 or the equivalent in your country, unless it's a proper indie developer, that is what games are now. I just, and as with all of these types of questions, it's worth however much you're willing to pay for it, right?
I think default is $60 now, by the way, so I think $50 is a cheaper price point.
Yeah, exactly. Firstly, I think it is cheaper, and two, I do think WarioWare has a specific audience, like we said, like families or people that are going to play it with mates and stuff. But if you're that person, you're probably going to get hours and hours and hours of this across, multiple evenings and weekends and stuff. Like, and it'll be one of those ones like that you'll just get out at a certain point in time, you know, when you're all together, and it's just like a mainstay. That's how Smooth Moves was for me. It wasn't something I put in the Wii every day and kept playing and playing and playing, but it was something that would always come out when people were around or whatever. And I just think like when you actually rack up the hours, you're like, Christ, I actually played that for a ridiculous amount of time. And then you go, well, yeah, considering a bloody cinema ticket's about a tenner these days and the rest for 2 hours worth of entertainment. Yeah, but like it's all relative, isn't it? Sorry, that was your question. I just fucking steamrolled it.
It's fine. Works for me.
What's your favourite mini game?
Any of them involving your ass. There's a lot of arse play in this game. Like there really is. There's one where you stamp your bum on the stamps to get points. There's one where you have to draw a signature with your ass. There's one where you have to catch fish between your thighs. There's loads of weird stuff. There's loads of them. So anything with your ass.
Okay. Should I buy Alan Wake 2 or continue acting like an idiot waiting for code? If so, deluxe or standard?
Yes, and standard.
Yeah, I don't know what
I don't know, but I can't think of what it would be. I can't think of anything they could have in the deluxe that would make you go. I mean, let's get you the DLC, I suppose. But then, yes, you should buy it.
Definitely, I concur. Are you going to try Dusk or Postal Brain Damaged on PS5?
Dusk, if I get time. Postal Brain Damaged, I haven't heard of. And if it's
I was going to say,
it's the Postal series, then no.
If
it's from the Postal series, no, because like I played them back when the Postal 2. No, which I think it might be actually, but Dusk maybe if I get time.
When will you play Lost Judgment? Come on,
I had downloaded it.
I got so far.
Yeah, no, I had downloaded it ahead of the big rush, and something came up, and I just didn't play it. So I don't know. One day.
I mean, I'm waiting for my questions because I know some crap like that's coming up in mine, so I'm not going to berate you for too much for that. And finally, then his last question for you is: what are your thoughts on Disney Dreamlight Valley on Apple Arcade, including the expansion for free and not having any battle pass or in-game currency?
I don't know enough about this to really comment. Like they're very different markets, aren't they? Apple Arcade is a hugely different market to someone who's playing Disney Dreamlight Valley on Xbox or whatever. Like, so I don't know. You are paying for a subscription if you've got Apple Arcade, aren't you? So
yeah.
So maybe the Apple have been able to sort of eat the sunk cost in it. Like they've been able to just get that part of it because they're getting a monthly subscription out of people. So I can't really add much more than that. So I'll just ask you your question.
Okay.
Have you tried the Peru organic Nespresso pods? They're my favourite so far of the non-flavoured ones.
So no, because I don't have an espresso machine that takes pods. I'm a bean to cup man. I don't know if there's Peru organic beans. If there are, then let me know, mate. Because you tried the ones I recommended. So I'm more than happy to always try recommended coffee, but I can't do pods because that would break my machine because it grinds the beans down. So I have nowhere to put the pods. So let me know if they're beans because I'll give it a whirl.
Okay, and I'm going to assume this is a typo, but I'm going to ask it as written. Are you going to play the Tales of Arse expansion? I didn't put it. Again. Are you going to play the Tales of Arse expansion? It means Arise.
I swear, earlier that said Tales of Arise. Have you changed that?
I have not changed it, I promise.
Okay, so Tales of Arse, no, although I'd be really keen to know what that is. I feel like that's a game I could, get into, so to speak.
It's WarioWare, isn't it?
Yeah. Tales of Arise expansion, I really, really want to play it. It's come at an awful time for me, because, I've said it on the Discord. I'm currently playing Tears of the Kingdom and trying to find time for Spider-Man and other things that I need to play for Game of the Year. Alan Wake, I need to play more of and stuff. So it's come at an awful time, but I will eventually play it. Whether it ends up being relatively soon or not, I can't not play it because I love Tales of Arise, as everyone knows. 10 out of 10 game. So I definitely will play it. I just don't know how soon I can, because it's kind of had to get demoted a little bit versus some of the others I just kind of really have to play before Game of the Year.
Okay. What November game do you want to play? Tales of
Arise expansion. But other than that, obviously we've got the new COD coming out, so I'll play that. The Mario RPG's out in November, isn't it?
Yeah.
Must be.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that as well. I mean, there's others as well that I won't get a chance to, like Talos Principle 2 and stuff that's right up my street that I God knows when. But yeah, it's ridiculous that there's still a load of games in November that I still want to play. It's not, I don't see any evidence of this quietening down malarkey that people seem to think that's happening.
No.
I'm not seeing it.
Well, with that in mind, will you be resuming the Xenoblade 3 DLC since you're surely bored of Tears of the Kingdom by now?
I mean, I'm glad you didn't read it out because what he wrote as his question is absolutely diabolical, saying Tears of the Kingdom is 7 out of 10.
Yeah, I'm not saying that out loud.
No. So that's actually, because that annoyed me, if I'm honest, when I read this question. That got me irritated. So I was going to go, no, I'm not going to fucking play it because she said Tears of the Kingdom is 7 out of 10. I'm replaying that game at the moment. It's phenomenal. Absolutely amazing. I mean, I said I thought I'd struggle with Xenoblade 3 DLC months ago. And that was before I realized what this year was going to be with all of the bangers. And it's just meant it's even less. It's not going to happen. It is not going to happen this year unless it's one of those, sort of like genuinely over Christmas catch-up games when it is genuinely quiet. But even then, I don't know. It's so sad because like all the lore and stuff and the characters. I have to eventually. I just don't know when. Stop asking me every week. I
know the answer to this question. This is an easy one. Do you like Alan Wake 2 more than Resident Evil 4 remake? All right, maybe it's not an easy one. Jesus.
No. But there are aspects of Alan Wake 2, which I think I've probably come across, that I adore, that I haven't seen done in games, including Resident Evil 4 remake. They are ironically very different, even though they've both come from Resident Evil beginnings, essentially. But no, if the answer is a simple yes or no, no. But it's not going to be as simple as that when we get to Game of the Year at all. And it's because there's so much of it I love. So much of it that I love in Alan Wake 2. It's just, oh my God. And my feelings may change when I finish the game as well. That's the other thing. Obviously, Resident Evil 4 played a while ago, finished it. It's a remake of an old game. Alan Wake 2, brand new game, not finished it. So that's why it's hard. That's why you thought I was just going, blah. Whereas actually I've given a ridiculous long answer.
I mean, I'm going to veto and skip the next question as well because you haven't finished Alan Wake 2 and he asks what you want to see from the DLC without spoilers.
Okay, I will answer that though.
Okay.
In very generic terms. What do I want to see from Alan Wake 2 DLC? We touched on it when we talked about the game. This game does batshit crazy stuff in the way it chooses to execute its story. It doesn't give any grams of fuck and makes you go, oh, video games can do this. This is fun. This is enjoyable. This is memorable. I'd want DLC packed with that, with loads of new ideas of things like that. That's how I would want to feel in DLC. Okay. I want to feel like, how did they leave this out of the main game? This is awesome. This is great. This is funny. This is like amazing. This is memorable. That's what I want.
Are you going to play Football Manager 24 on any platform?
I can't. Not this year. I can't. I mean, if I played Football Manager 24, I'm not coming on Game of the Year. Because I just wouldn't. I sound like a Tory then. It can't happen. It's shit. But that game would consume me, and then I wouldn't be fit for purpose. So, for the good of everyone else, I shall refrain, and therefore the Game of the Year podcast will be amazing with my presence in it.
Okay.
So sadly, no.
Okay. Well, back to you for the last two questions then.
Yeah. So Matt King sent us in a question. He said, "What would you like to see Insomniac do differently if and when they do Spider-Man 3? Caveat: I haven't started Spider-Man 2 yet. I know Matt's just finished it. I think in our Discord, he's been playing it recently. It's downloaded. I just haven't.
I can answer this, and I can keep it quite simple. I think they have to go somewhere else.
Somewhere else. No, I think at some point you kind of go. From what you guys were saying, it's amazing what they've done in the same setting.
It's a fantastic game, but I think this is. I don't know what they could actually do to New York now to make it viable without people going, come on. You know, I know that's where they are. That's where the Spider-Men live. I know.
That's where the Spider-Man lives.
No, you know what I mean. That is where they are.
It's just
but
the way
I think
you said it. It's just funny. Yeah.
I think
know
you
what
have
mean.
to now. I just don't think you could get away. I mean, it's going to be years.
Yeah.
So they've probably got plans for it. But I don't think you could yet again go still here, but different villains and different story. Like it I don't know that the location matters even that much when the movement and combat is that good. So I think that find a way, even if it's a case of, even if like you end up with dual protagonists again, but one of them is somewhere else, you know, that's fine.
Yeah.
But I think I mean, God, I don't know. I mean, there's almost part of me that thinks this is one of those things where you think you've taken this as far as you can go. So I would be very interested to see what 3 entails.
I mean, yeah, exactly. That's the thing.
I just don't know.
I can't comment as much, but I do agree with that. I'd be amazed, but you know,
they will make more because they sell brilliantly and are really well received. But like, I just don't know. Is the honest truth. Like, no more bikes.
What's that?
That it won't mean anything to you. You haven't played it yet. Just trust me on that.
Okay. And then the last question this week comes from McPoo. He simply asked, "What's worse, a game being bad or a game being boring?" Now, I think this is obvious.
It's really easy. It's boring.
Yeah.
A bad game's a bad game. A bad game's a bad game. Like I'm happy I can sit and write about a bad game and I can explain why it's bad. But a game being boring is like that is the fundamental core of games. Should be some kind of entertainment.
See, I had a different perspective on this. Fucking hell, we're going to dissect language. This will be fun. Because I was of the opinion, right? If something's boring, that's different people's perspective of what fun and boring is, right? One man's trash, another man's treasure, right? People don't find storage solutions in Astroneer very exciting. I do. You know, there's people find enjoyment in different things, and so but a
bad game is one I'm talking about. Mechanically, objectively, doesn't work very well. The mechanics aren't correct. They don't work. It's bad. That to me is just a miserable experience. But
that's what I'm saying. So for me, that's worse.
But at least I can be like, I can talk about that, and there's something to talk about. When a game's just boring.
I think you're talking. Okay,
me.
So you're viewing this from a kind of critique point of view.
It's almost objective versus subjective.
Yeah,
because a game, if it's bad, is often objectively bad, whereas something's boring or not is a subjective emotion, isn't it? You like the Total War games. I don't. I don't think they're bad, but I wouldn't go like, oh, that's a 2 out of 10. But I would find it boring. It's not for me, and that to me is a far more miserable experience to be bored by something that's supposed to entertain me.
Because I reflect on, you know, I feel like I have a new standard in my life since Babylon's Fall about what a bad game can be. And I feel like a boring game is, you know, it's disappointing or whatever. A bad game fucking irritates me. Like, and I remember how annoyed, and I get annoyed when I think about Babylon's Fall all the time.
Yeah, but you could stop playing that. Like with Babylon's Fall, you can go, "This is bad. This is not well made."
Stop playing a boring game. Like I just feel like for me, what's worse is a game that is bad. A game that is
not for me. But it's fair enough.
I thought this would be really obvious.
No, I can cope with bad. I can find bad funny. You know, you can see things in a bad game that's janky or like real bad glitches, and it's funny. But like a game being boring for me is like, that's something went really wrong. Something went really wrong somewhere.
And we don't have a third person to kind of.
Well, no, so we can just have our own opinions, and they're both correct.
That's it.
I just a boring game to me is like, how did this happen? Like, because
a bad game to me is how did this happen? What the fuck?
But a bad game can be bad mechanically, but have something about it that interests you enough to keep going. A boring game is just like, oh, this is miserable. To me, a boring game is just a miserable experience. So
I thought that was gonna. I thought you would agree with me, but
sorry.
You. Variety is the spice of life, and we're all individuals. Lovely. That on that bombshell, that is the end of listener correspondence this week. So let's play that jingle. Chris Hyde, listener correspondence. It's time. It's time. Chris Hyde.
And it's not just the end of the section, that's the end of the podcast, end of episode 5 through 7. Thanks for being here, Chris. To mean I don't have to talk to myself, and I'm going to thank myself for being here, so you didn't have to talk to yourself, because who knows how it could have gone.
Yeah, God, that would have been a miserable experience for everybody. That would have been both bad and boring for all the listeners if I'd just been here talking to myself. So
yeah, well, we don't know. It might have been really enjoyable. Who knows? Next week, we'll talk about some stuff, probably some Persona 5 Tactica in a preview sense, maybe some Super Mario RPG in a preview sense, probably some other games. I mean, I've been...
Probably.
Listen, I'm very briefly going to say I'm also doing my Game of the Year cleanup, so I've been playing today some Baldur's Gate 3, okay? And I've saved this till the end of the podcast because I want to sell it, because I know you didn't get on with it and you've not played it since, so I want to sell it to you. I want to give you a little preview, okay, of a moment. It won't genuinely be a moment of the year because I don't think it's one that has to happen. I went up to interrupt and talk to investigate rather, and to get inside of a goblin camp today, okay, and I failed a conversation check, because it's me.
The dice roll hates
you. Because it's a dice roll game, and of course it did. And I was like, you know what? Let's just see where this goes, because I've played a bit more of it now, and it's like it doesn't always mean death. So I failed the conversation check, and it was an intimidation one. And so this goblin's like, you're not fooling me, mate. I tell you what though, I'll let you in if you don our colours. And then he points down, and there's a big old dog shit on the floor. Okay. And he says, smear that makeup on your face and we'll let you in. And I'm like, fucking hell, okay, this game's just, I mean, I like it now anyway, but this is going places. So I'm
rugby talk.
No, you've heard nothing yet, right? Because this is both brilliance in terms of comedy and mechanically. This is why I like this game now. So there's I assume you can do it. Actually, there is a thing
roll
that's like there is another dice roll check, and it is basically an athletics one where you pick the dog shit up. I mean, it's not dog shit.
Oh, but what? So you have to roll to see if you can successfully pick up dog shit?
No. You have to roll to see if you can be athletic enough to pick it up and throw it at the goblin's face.
Right. Okay.
Maybe the dice rolls don't hate me, because I succeeded and threw a dog shit. It's one of the animals in the game. It's not a dog, but it's equivalent of a dog. I threw the dog shit right in that goblin's face, which, as you'd imagine, initiates combat.
Yeah, I could imagine. Yeah.
And that's great. But that's not all. Then, of the enemies, because he was stood next to the wolfy dog thing, and there was another goblin to his left, all the percentages are like normally what you expect. His, however, I have an advantage of, because he's been blinded. Because I've thrown dog shit in his face and he can't see properly. And if that isn't a reason to play this game...
You've been blinded by shit.
But the fact that any of those things are an option is hilarious. The fact that the option made me have a combat advantage because he had dog shit in his face and he couldn't see, and he's like blinded by it, is like, maybe all those people who say this game's amazing, maybe they're onto something.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not. Anyway, that's the end of the podcast. Hope you enjoyed my dog shit story, and I hope I've convinced you, Chris, to give it another try. I know you're going to anyway, but I'm glad I did, and we'll talk more about that. That's just a little preview of the kind of amazing moments you'll hear about at Game of the Year in December when that goes live. Thanks for being here, Chris. Thanks to anyone who listened or watched, and we will probably be back next week. It is still very busy in terms of games, and we have to actually play them to be able to talk about them, so that might be why we're a bit sporadic at this time of year. Other than that, we will speak to you next week, or whenever you choose to listen. Bye-bye for now.